Homestead in Virginia has been around since 1766, 225 years. In the 1830s, it became a health spa. And in 1891, the Ingalls family purchased the resort, and it's still owned by the fourth generation of that family. It's a beautiful Georgian-style architecture. You can play golf, tennis, shoot, go horse riding. It's a place of pure tranquility, and it's nice. And that's where we are right now, in the shadow of the fabled Homestead, awaiting the arrival of the 8th stage of the Tour DuPont coming in from Lynchburg. You know, it's fair to say that this year's Tour DuPont is without doubt the hardest since the race began back in 1989. Hello again, everybody. I'm Phil Liggett, as ever, with my co-commentator Brian Drebber. Now, this race so far has been a battle between Mexico's word-perfect rider, Raul Alcala, and Lance Armstrong from the American Motorola team. They're separated after over 600 miles by just 23 seconds. But there are so many more riders down that general classification, Brian, who can win this race.
This, Phil, might be one of the stages, the first one, in fact, for this year's tour, that could be very, very unpredictable. Although we have to look back for the last 2 years, Team Motorola has had the number for this Homestead finish, and it's been a gallop to the line every time. 2 years ago, Steve Bauer put on a 54 chainring. That's a big gear. Got through the corner first when the finish line was a little bit further up the road and won the stage. A year later, Phil Anderson of Motorola put on a 55 chainring. That's even bigger. He galloped a little bit further down the road and won the finish that time as well. Now, we have it on information that Bauer has put on a 56. He's going for the big gear because of the long downhill finish here. Enough riders are going to get over the top of the last climb to make it an interesting finish, and I think that group is going to contain all of the favorites, so there won't be any change at the top of GC. At least we don't think so. Rather, it's going to be a race of attrition. Guys who are down in the standings are going to be coming off the back. But once again, a wild sprint finish here in the streets of Hot Springs.
And the scene this morning as the Tour DuPont prepares for its long ride to the Homestead. But what happened yesterday when the riders arrived in the city of Lynchburg? Let's have a look.
Early on, a little bit of nervousness, but no real attacking until, well, things got rolling along in single file here, and up front, the pressure is being put on. The first real breakaway of the day, Roman Saprikin, the reigning junior world champion, takes off just an hour after the start.
The young Russian teams, they used to be Soviet teams, have always ridden well here in the Tour DuPont, and now Saprikin was off on a lone escape. His lead started modestly, a mere 6 minutes 45 seconds, but it would grow to more than 15 minutes. But he wouldn't be alone all of the way. Soon he would be joined by a rider from class, Manuel Fernandez. 5th in the Spanish national amateur titles last year, he was now riding as a professional at the first attempt.
Eventually, Saprikin was able to get information that Fernandez was coming up. It had been a one-on-one chase for a while, but soon enough, these two joined forces, and Saprikin seemed happy that his Spanish partner was now on board. 2 heads are better than 1, and the odds are now twice as good, but these guys just couldn't seem to get it together. Saprikin almost misses the turn. Fernandez does, and Roman Saprikin now looking back at his buddy, trying to get him along. Fernandez attacked Saprikin, and once Saprikin rolled in, he applauded the somewhat unusual tactics of his erstwhile partner.
The two leaders were caught on the finishing circuit at Lynchburg. 20 miles to go. The field came together. It should have been a day for the pure sprinters, but the attacks came so fast and so furious that it was Ron Kiefel who lasted best of them all. He broke away in the last 500 meters, and he held the field off to give Coors Light their first stage victory of this year's Tour DuPont. They tried every day. It was their new man on the team, Ron Kiefel, who finally gave them the decision. The final look over the shoulder, and then it's time for the victory salute. Kiefel wins on the line. The pack were right behind him, and coming up there in second place was Veenstra. The overall situation this morning then looks like this. Alcala ahead of Armstrong, ahead of Bart Bowen of America. In the sprint competition, Veenstra leads that one. In the mountains competition, it's Scott Mercier. And Saprikin yesterday, well, he deserved the most aggressive rider prize. So the atmosphere now set for the start this morning, stage number 8. Jeff Roke doing a marathon job himself every day on this year's Tour DuPont. And so too our man, because Paul Sherwin, 7 times a rider of the Tour de France, is also sampling the atmosphere at the start.
Well, you can feel the tension mounting on the start line this morning. Everybody knows the next 2 days of this year's Tour DuPont are going to be critical because we're going into the mountains. I went down into the breakfast area this morning 2.5 hours before as normal, and there were no riders to be seen. That's normally when they would eat before a stage race, but today with the mountain coming after 25 miles, the riders were down 3.5 hours before, so they'd be properly digested. Another big change today is the temperature. The temperature's come down, the rain has come in a little bit, which will mean the riders are more prone to attacking. It's been very hot for the last few days, and the race is really going to open up. I think, though, when we go over Thunder Ridge, we'll find a group of the top favourites going over the top together. Now, if nobody's missing, we'll get a general regrouping on the flatlands in between, and then they'll attack on the final climb up to the Homestead to try and surprise one of the leaders, Alcala, Kvalsvold, Armstrong. That's when we'll see them coming to the fore.
The Word Perfect team have had to work very hard, first in defending the jersey worn by Yellow on the right, and now by Raul Alcala. They have expended a tremendous amount of energy, maybe too much.
My team is working all days, and maybe I'll be alone there. There's only one thing, I'm not afraid, but anyway, it has to be care, you know.
Lance Armstrong signing autographs, still lies second overall and still very much a favourite for this race by the time we reach the end in Greensboro. There are other riders too who would like to wear that final leader's yellow jersey, like Atle Volsvold. For the last 3 years he's finished second. Now can he improve on that 6th place? Bart Bowen, the champion of the United States, he is a great climber. Watch out for the next few days for him too, the champion of the United States. He's 3rd overall. And these are like the legs of Ron Kiefel, Brian.
Well, how quick of you to recognize the newest member of the Coors Light team. Looks like he's phoning home. Mike Engelman, the man that they count on to climb the mountains. He has been delivering, but modestly so far.
I think Michael can just keep riding the race that he's been riding, and the 2 leaders really are Lance and Raul, and we're just going to have to see what they do, try to take advantage of their moves. I mean, they're the 2 strong men in the race. Bowen, Kvalsvold, Engelman are just sort of watching and marking, and they're looking for opportunities. If one or the other of those guys cracks, then I think you're going to see the other 3 guys on GC start to make some moves.
Well, we've bragged about the climbing prowess of Raul Alcala and of Atle Volsvold and Lance Armstrong. Instead, it is young Scott Mercier of the Saturn team that has instead worn this jersey as the mountains begin to go up and down. He's checking the map just to see how bad it's going to be today.
I've always considered myself a pretty good climber, but not necessarily king of the mountain. My climbing this year actually isn't quite as good as it has been in years past because I've gained a little weight and my time trialing's improved. But, you know, I like the sound of it. It sounds pretty good, and I'm going to do my best to keep it.
So the Stars are back in the saddle for the 8th day of the Tour DuPont, and they're facing a rough ride to the mountains of Virginia. If they're on holiday, they'd be really looking forward to going to the Homestead, I can assure you of that. It's a ride of 113 miles, taking the rides away from Lynchburg, and we head off into the Virginia hills. You just follow the trees, really, and you'll finish up at the Homestead deep in the valley. But there are 1 or 2 nasty climbs on the way before they'll enjoy a good night's stay in the resort. The race itself faces Thunder Ridge, and this is the first big climb of the new range of mountains, and it comes soon after the start. Then we go downhill a little ways before we climb over Warm Springs, and then we drop down to the finish, and a hair-raising finish in the Homestead.
Raul Alcala still wearing the yellow jersey that first was worn by his teammate Yellen sitting right next to him. These Word Perfect riders, actually that's Eric van der Aert in there as well, the sprinter who has yet to win a stage. These guys are giving it all.
So the field make a nervous start. They're heading towards Virginia and the Homestead. We'll be back to see how they get on.
I'm Chris Fowler. Tonight on SportsCenter, the Mets get a gem from a very unlikely source. Plus, we'll preview tonight's NBA playoff wars, and the troubles continue for Boris Becker. Join Charlie Steiner and me at 7 Eastern.
We're back with the Tour DuPont. The sun beats down yet again on this Sunshine Tour, and the riders are now heading for the first challenge of the day. A little hill, we call it the Unknown Mountain. I guess that means, Brian, nobody knows what it's called.
Lance Armstrong and the other favorites are not going to worry about the first climb. It's the second one that's going to be very difficult for them, because the first one comes just 10 miles into the race, the second one at 30 miles, and that's why they got up and ate breakfast so early this morning. Bart Bowen hopefully fully digested. Scott Mercier, the king of the mountains, sets off in hot pursuit of yet more points, and he had said that he's determined to hold that jersey as long as he possibly can. It looks as though he's doing everything he needs to make sure that that happens.
Well, he wears the leader's jersey as current leader of the King of the Mountains competition. Here we are on the unknown mountain. Little group of riders coming up behind him. He needn't worry about some of them, Brian, because the Saturn riders have got the first 3 places.
2 of his own teammates coming up to make sure nobody else gets it. Jose Manuel Urdia was managed to sneak in for 4th. You don't see his name on the list there, but he's the guy. Here are the 2 teammates, Greg Strock and Brian Walton, who held the jersey of the King of the Mountain the first stage on a Category 4 climb. Now they go over the top, and the rest and relaxation starts to come in. Mercier waits for his 2 teammates and, in fact, the whole rest of the field.
Well, the Saturn boys have had a great start to the day. Uria is not happy. I think he wants the race to continue, but why should they worry? They've got the points they set out for. Number 77, the champion of Switzerland, Thomas Wegmuller. The pack in a long, thin line, so somebody is keeping the screws turned down very tightly at the front of this race today. And this is what it's like to go down a mountain at 45 and 50 miles an hour when you're riding a racing bike that weighs just 16 pounds and can be blown away by a gust of wind.
On the descent, these riders strolling along and not having to pedal too hard, but they sure have to be mindful of the tight corners, of the wheels around them, the line through the turn, and they're also being concerned a little bit because there are intermittent showers in the area, and the road might be a little wet, and they'll go from a dry road to a wet road. They may even be riding in and out of a little bit of rain here today. Here we see Ramon Antonio Rota of the Kelme team. Looks like he's trying to get a little something going. The response coming from the Amaya team. Ron Kiefel of Coors Light is there, and even Eric van der Arden, who is obviously up front to cover the moves. Here comes Jim Copeland of the Chevrolet LA Sheriff team.
Well, there's about 7 riders broken clear. None of them will affect the overall lead of this race. They've lost too much time already. That could be the ingredients for a nice little breakaway, because a lot of riders near the top of the leaderboard will be glad to get the lowly placed men away to take the pressure off the rest of the race for the day. Now, can that group get away? Eric van der Arden can't climb, so he'll want to get clear before the climb. This man is a good climber, Ratnikov. He's riding his 4th Tour DuPont, Brian.
Santiago Crespo of the Amaya team comes through. There's Jim Copeland, the man who has figured very aggressively in a lot of stages here for the Chevy LA Sheriff team. And Ron Kiefel, fresh off a stage win the day before, looking for 2 in a row perhaps. Here's Norman Alvis, the 11th hour replacement for Phil Anderson of Team Motorola. And finally, the man that started it, Ramon Antonio Rota. That's our 7-man breakaway, and not a lot of reaction out of the field at this point.
Well, next stop is the top of Thunder Ridge. That's a real brute of a climb. There's even time bonuses for the first 3 riders over the top. And that's one reason why people like Alka and Armstrong might want to keep this leading group away. Now the pain of Virginia is beginning to tell. This is the leading group, and this is Maxim Ratnikov in the white. Norm Alvis stripping down for the long climb in the humid weather. Jim Copeland, last time I saw him race was 1987. He won 3 stages at the Tour of Australia. And sitting at the back here is Rota. Now the Word Perfect boys are setting the tempo. Perhaps the break has got too far ahead.
Well, the lead has got over 2 minutes at this time. 2:35 was a split that we had heard at this point, and the most dangerous men in the breakaway are Ron Kiefel. He is down 2:05 on that man, Raul Alcala. Jim Copeland down 2:07, and Norm Alvis 2:14. The others, well, 6 minutes, 10 minutes, even 15 minutes and 40 seconds in the case of Eric van der Arden. So the danger men in the breakaway are Ron Kiefel, Norm Alvis, and Jim Copeland. Those are the guys that the race leader, Raul Alcala, is worried about.
And each of the riders willing to help here. They do what they call one-on-one. They set the pace. They share their friendship on rival teams until they get near the end. This is the top of Thunder Ridge, and this looks as though Copeland is finding the pressure at the top. Jim Copeland over the top first, followed by Ron Kiefel and Norm Alvis.
I think really what Jim Copeland found was himself at the front of the rotation. It was just his turn to lead at that point. There didn't seem to be much of a sprint because none of these riders are in contention for the King of the Mountain prize. Back in the main group, a little bit of disarray going up Thunder Ridge, and maybe some confusing information coming about just how big the lead of these 7 riders is.
There they are. They're on the way down again, but don't forget, before we get to the finish, they've got to go up again too. They've got to climb the rather nasty climb of Warm Springs. The Word Perfect boys are paying more attention to the front now, and they seem to be pegging the escape. In that lead group for the Word Perfect team is Eric van der Arden, and for the Motorola team you have Norm Alvis. And this looks as though Len Pettyjohn is rather pleased to see Ron back in the action again today after that wonderful win yesterday.
It's really been great to watch Ron Kiefel over the last couple of weeks get a win, a second place in Athens, Georgia, a win on the stage yesterday, and now he's in the break.
So the break of 7 are heading towards the finish. Will they be caught? Don't go too far away. The Tour de France on its stage now of 113 miles down to the Homestead. The big field trying now to redress the situation. They're searching for a gap of a couple of minutes. 7 riders are out in front, and they're going to have to catch them quick if they're going to beat them to the line at the finish. Still one climb to come, the climb of Warm Springs, which is around the 106 mile point. These are the leaders in this 7-man breakaway group, being led here by the Spanish rider Roman Rota, and then followed through by Santiago Crespo of the Amaya team. In the white jersey there, Maxim Ratnikov of the Soviet Union. The chase down, Brian, and it looks, as you said earlier, that the Were Perfect have found themselves some allies.
Well, the Koolstrop team of Belgium, we're not sure exactly why, except perhaps to share the wealth at the end of the race here, that they have decided to align themselves with the Were Perfect riders. They don't have much to gain here. None of their riders are a threat on overall.
Well, this is the climb of Warm Springs, and the breakaway has split up under the impulsion here of Jim Copeland. And Copeland is really piling on the pressure here, and it looks to me as though it is only the Amaya rider, Crespo, who can hang on to the wheel, because there's Rota losing contact. Norm Alvis has also lost contact. At the back there is Ron Kiefel. Even further down is Eric van der Arden. Those riders have lost ground now at the front of the breakaway. The chase down is happening. The gap is closing.
The hard-charging field really going after that breakaway right now. Crespo and Copeland going over the top together, but out of the bunch comes Alexei Byakov of the Russian national team, and along with Villanueva of Klaas, and all the break has been caught right now, with the exception of Crespo. Here are the 3 favorites in the race. Atle Valsvold, then Raul Alcala, Lance Armstrong zipping up his jersey for the descent, which will be a little more chilly. Jorgi Mueller has also come up there, and there is Crespo in the pink jersey, and Byakov. He is a danger man on that Russian team, sitting 8th overall in the race right now, just 1:26 behind. The field will not let him get away.
Just 18 years of age, Byakov. That is a superb piece of riding by the young teenager. He has one of the most experienced professionals behind him, though. Jorg Mueller, here he is. Jorg Mueller, former champion of Switzerland, and a rider who so narrowly failed to win the stage up to the Massanutten Resort when he was caught by Lance Armstrong just before the line. And he's having a very, very good Tour DuPont indeed.
Well, Jorg Mueller trying to succeed where he failed so narrowly before. He is on a solo move here with about a 20-second lead is all that he has gained, with just about 4 kilometers to go. But the field is really breathing down his back now. He ventures a look under his shoulder there to see just how close they've come. Gets out of the saddle. It's do or die for Jorg Mueller. He's either going to do it and win the stage alone, or he's going to get eaten alive in the last kilometer of this race.
6 Tours de France for Jorg Mueller. And now in the Tour DuPont, he's holding off the strong men of this year's race. They're breathing down his neck. We can't actually see them, but they can't be more than 15 seconds behind him, because he's only just escaped them. He's off the top of Warm Springs. He's on the final mad dash down to the finish now. At the finish outside the homes. And there they are, Brian. They're right on him.
Right behind the motorcycle, indeed. Jorg Mueller's days are numbered here in the last 1.5 kilometers of this race. That's all there is left. A few more bends and he'll be able to see the finish line. But I don't think he's going to see it all by himself. He's going to have to look through the charging field and try to hold on and just stay with them.
Well, if you don't try, you never win a stage of an international stage race. Mueller is playing his final cards here, because the whole field is closing down on him, and it looks very much now as though we are going to be treated to a mass sprint finish here at the Homestead. Don't miss it. Come back soon. They've got him. And welcome back, and now the riders are heading down into the Homestead of 45+ miles now. This is the shoulder-to-shoulder sprint with Steve Bauer going for the corner first.
Bauer's in there just about 3rd position on the far right side of the road. He's getting pinched off up front. Looks like one of the Amaya riders is there. And now as they come out from behind, yes, definitely Amaya. Word Perfect is there. This is the wild snaking gallop coming through the center. One of the USA jerseys, George Hincapie, the big guy, coming right dead up the center on the far right. It's Malcolm Elliott, but it looks like Hincapie has gotten the win.
So George, Brian, 19 years of age, George Hincapie has taken the line. The American amateur has socked it to the professionals. Tremendous ride.
Well, here are the officials now discussing something, and well, a communique came down a week ago or so about these wild sprints and trying to make them a little safer. They're waving their arms around, and they're in accord about something, but I can't really see what it. Now, on the right is Yuri Manus, the U.S. coach, and Steve Penny on the left, Mark Gorski. It must involve Hincapie. These are all the USCF guys.
Ryan, the decision is they're going to disqualify Hincapie. This is why, watching the center of your picture here, George Hincapie coming off the dogleg bend that brings him into the finishing line, has been disqualified, and let's see what has happened. His hand is going up here, and it seems to be touching the Amaya rider in pink. That's Per Pedersen, the Danish rider riding on the Amaya team.
But Pedersen is coming over on him. Now, Hincapie, look at this. He is obviously distraught over having a win taken away from him, disqualified for putting his hands out, and, well, we've got to take another look at that, or at least get some more word on just exactly what's going on. Hincapie very distraught over this situation.
We should emphasize, Brian, that he's disqualified from first place, not from the race. He will continue tomorrow, but let's have a look again.
Clearly, Hincapie going straight down the road. Watch his wheels next to the yellow lines, and the Amaya rider, Pedersen, is coming over on him. George reaches out and just pushes him away to keep from crashing into him.
Well, there's no doubt, in my opinion, in fact, that Hincapie has been disqualified from first place. A very, very harsh decision indeed by the referees of this race. It's given Dave Rayner the victory from Britain and the IME Hellshire team. Eric Decker is in second place. Malcolm Elliott is third. I'm not surprised that the young man is upset and confused.
George, what happened?
I don't know. I mean, I was just passing by. I mean, maybe I bumped somebody or whatever. I mean, it's just part of a sprint, you know. It's not nothing. If I was coming up on somebody, it's because I was going a lot faster than him. That's because I was going to beat him, not because of anything.
What do you think they're talking about?
I don't know. I mean, when in a sprint like that, there's always bumping going on. You know, if someone comes next to you, you have to do something, or else you'll crash. I mean, I didn't do anything. I don't know exactly what's going on. A lot of things go on in a sprint. I mean, I didn't do anything wrong.
Will there be? Will you guys appeal it or protest it or do anything to try to get the win back?
Definitely. I mean, I deserve the win. I won the race fair and square. We're going to appeal for sure.
Good luck. I hope it works out for you.
Thanks, Brian.
Well, I'm afraid, Brian, it didn't, because the decision is the appeal has failed, and Dave Rayner of the IME Hellshire gives them the first win of the Tour DuPont here at the Homestead. The overall situation, though, there's no changes today because the men that matter all finished together. Raul Alcala finished 18th, in fact, and retains the 23 seconds advantage over Lance Armstrong, a minute 2 over Bart Bowen. The 1993 Tour DuPont will continue on ESPN, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 3:30 p.m. Pacific. Stage 10 on May 15. And remember, we go right through to our conclusion show at Greensboro when we finish in North Carolina. The 1993 Tour DuPont has been brought to you by DuPont, sponsor of the Tour DuPont, America's premier cycling event. And by Virginia Tourism. For a free travel guide, call 1-800-VISIT-VA. And by DuPont Supplex Nylon Fabrics for activewear apparel. So, on this very controversial day today, there's no doubt about who still leads this race. It's the Mexican Raul Alcala. No controversies surrounding him. He'll be in the mountains tomorrow. We leave you with this sad picture tonight of George Hincapie, a 19-year-old American amateur.